I define sexual harassment as any kind of unwanted sexual contact from anyone if you don't explicitly say yes to any kind of sexual activity, even if it's as minor as like a hug. You're trespassing on people's personal boundaries and they don't explicitly say yes to that.
I would define sexual harassment as unwanted contact that breaches privacy and comfort, and obviously steps into the bounds of sexual activity or sexual misconduct that is, like I said, unwanted.
Now to the latest on Harvey Weinstein. The New York Times reporting allegations by numerous women who say the Hollywood mogul sexually harassed them. His alleged victims over nearly 3 decades include stars like Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan.
While sexual harassment is an issue that has been affecting boys, girls, women, and men for decades, recently it has become a trend. Earlier this year, the New York Times broke the silence and the internet when it released an article about allegations of sexual harassment against American film producer and former film executive Harvey Weinstein. This quickly became the gateway for many sexual harassment victims to break their silence and tell their stories. Among the women who have come forward are Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, and many more. Additionally, it also gave way for other sexual harassment victims, including boys, to name other famous actors that have been involved in some sort of indiscretion. In social media, a movement was perpetrated by sexual harassment victims. They created the hashtag #MeToo as a symbol of what has happened to them and for others to know that they are not alone. According to Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization, every 98 seconds another American is sexually assaulted. Moreover, the age range in which people are most likely to be sexually assaulted ranges from 12 years old to 34 years old. According to the World Health Organization, violence against women, particularly inmate partner violence and sexual violence, is a major public health problem and a violation of women's human rights. Furthermore, they state that sexual and gender-based violence is violence committed against females and males because of the way a society assigns roles and expectations based on gender. This form of violence includes specific acts of women, such as sexual harassment, rape, female genital mutilation, wife-beating, forced marriage, forced prostitution, and/or discrimination and abuse for not conforming to social standards. It is important to remember that while sexual harassment has been a topic of conversation in the United States, this is definitely a global issue.
They say sexual harassment is so common, it's a part of South Africa's mining culture.
They start saying, for me to appoint you as maybe a shift supervisor, we can have a deal. The deal is that you give that particular person your cell number, meet in the lodges, hotels, whatever. Then you start having, some things like being in love, dating each other. Then that's where they can give you an appointment.
So, sexual harassment and rape definitely has different stigmas in different cultures, especially being Hispanic. I understand that Hispanic cultures may see manliness and emasculation as sort of a good thing, and so they don't necessarily take things like sexual harassment or rape seriously. They may blame the victim more than they persecute the actual perpetrators. So, like I said, starting the conversation and making it easier for victims to come out and understanding that not all victims come from an understanding culture helps them become more comfortable with telling their story.
The campaign against sexual harassment in Uganda is a one-woman operation, at least for now.
He's going to see my phone, then he's going to run away to another room.
Lindsay Kakunda hasn't got much support for her cause yet, but she isn't giving up. She says most assaults happen in busy public places, and hers was no exception. She resolved to take action after she was harassed by a group of men and a policeman nearby refused to help.
I am aware that this is a global issue. This is not something that just happens exclusively in the United States or to particular industries like actresses, but it also happens in the journalism field. It happens in business. It happens in many different spectrums of society that not many very people are willing to talk about. Unfortunately, I don't think that there is one catch-all solution to the problem of sexual harassment and rape, but I believe that we can make it easier by starting the conversation and making victims feel more comfortable in telling their stories and helping them hold their abusers accountable.
It is still a violation of human rights. It is still sexual harassment. And many times the women still do feel uncomfortable. They just don't exactly know how to grapple with the consequences or how they feel exactly about this because they don't realize just exactly how their privacy's been intruded upon. And it's just a conversation that needs to be made. It's a conversation that needs to be had in these other countries. And while in the US it is had, it's still not open enough. It's still not an open dialogue. And people are still afraid to come out with their experiences and their emotions about it. And it still needs to, it still needs to expand to these other countries. I actually know quite a number of boys who've been targeted for sexual harassment, and most of the times they don't exactly know what to do with it, or they don't even realize that it was sexual harassment because boys are taught that those things just don't happen to them, and women are taught the same thing. Men just don't, that just doesn't happen to them.
Men, I guess, have to learn to be more comfortable with saying it's happened to them, because I know it is in a way kind of against like masculinity or to like come out and say, oh, I've been sexually harassed. But I feel like if it's happened to you, then although it may be hard, I feel like it'll just be easier to like to come out and say it and seek for help. While it's not something great in terms of content, like obviously people being sexually harassed isn't a good thing, but it happens. So the fact that it's being brought to light and more people are speaking out, I feel like it's a very good thing, especially now that so many people in power, people who have been respected for a very long time, have been accused of this thing. I feel like it's allowing people to have more confidence in coming out against whoever has done it, because if they've seen that some of the biggest names are being accused, then I think it's allowing people to be like, why can't I come out, you know? And I feel like it's been accepted. I mean, if you look, the Times Person of the Year is the whole Me Too movement as a whole, so I feel like that's a really good thing. And I feel like we're just getting started. Like, I think it's gonna be a thing that's gonna evolve and change over time.
Cultures.
I feel like with everyone and every culture, no matter where you are, you just have to be educated on it and simply understand that it's not something that should be normalized. I know in some cultures it is normal, but it's still, just because it's normal doesn't mean it's acceptable. And I feel like people who are in power in those cultures, there needs to be a change in power and in the system, and then it'll transition into a regular society that these things aren't correct.
No, I don't think so. While each movement in feminism and women's rights, they do inch forward with progress, it's still not enough because women are still harassed, raped, attacked, and belittled every day and thought of differently and discriminated against every day. So clearly it's not enough when this is still an issue in the 21st century.
The growing movement of men in the United States in a multicultural sense and all around the world in an international sense, the growing movement of men who are standing up and speaking out about men's violence against women and going into parts of male culture that have historically been either apathetic about or openly hostile to women's efforts to engage them, that movement of men is indebted to the leadership of women on a personal level, on a professional level, on a political level, on an intellectual level, on every level. Women built these movements, and these are movements that are affecting, in a positive way, everybody, not just women and girls, but also men and boys.
I think that in the light of recent events, men have become more aware of the fact that they don't actually understand what sexual harassment is, or how women in particular experience this, and they just hadn't thought of that previous to recent events. And I think that they should really reflect upon their own interactions with women and the ways that they might abuse women themselves and discriminate against them and make them uncomfortable. And I think that they need to be more active in thinking about what they do and thinking about how they can change that and improve situations for women.